friends. Those southeast Tennessee ridges were already watching people. The first sound in the morning was creek water and someone splitting wood. And way up on a narrow road that was barely a road, a little mixed people started tucking themselves in. Later, folks would call some of these families Melungeons, a name that outsiders mostly used as an insult for mysterious, darker-skinned mountain people they couldn't neatly label as white or black or native. In reality, it was a blend: European, often Scots-Irish, English, sometimes Mediterranean like Portuguese or Italian, African, and Native American, all braided together in those ridges. They were not the rich folks in the flatlands. They were the ones the town people side-eyed, called names, tried to pin down with stuff like Portuguese, Black Dutch, Black Irish, anything but admit they didn't really understand who these ridge people were. But up on the mountain, nobody had time to care what they were called. They were busy surviving. They planted, hauled water, birthed babies, buried their dead, and walked to church along the same dirt over and over until it felt like a prayer trail. On Sundays, you'd hear singing drift through the trees, old hymns with an Irish ache in them and a mountain grit. These were devout people, Bible open, knees on wood floors, but they also knew the land talked. They watched the way fog moved in the hollers. They knew when the wind shifted wrong. They whispered stories about lights on the ridge, about things they'd seen that wouldn't sound right if you tried to tell them in town. They didn't worship those things. They just registered them, like you'd register a storm building on the horizon. Some of them had been sailors long ago. Some had ancestors dragged in chains. Some had walked out of famine and across an ocean. Some were native to those hills before Tennessee was a word. Somewhere in there is a man with dark eyes from Italy, a woman with stubborn Irish bone structure, and somebody with skin just a shade too dark for the neighbor's comfort. They found each other in those ridges and said, "You're mine," and the mountains sealed it in. Generation after generation, those families kept being strange in the exact same way. Not town people, not quite what the census takers wanted them to be. They worked hard, they fought hard. They prayed hard. They carried this deep, unshakable sense that God is real and hell is real and the unseen world is not a metaphor. They didn't say it fancy, they just knew. The kids grew up watching their grandparents talk to God like he was in the next room. And also listening to stories about banshees and lights on the ridge and things you don't mock. And over a long, long time, all those threads funneled down into one little branch of the tree. The Welches, the Gans, that Black Irish line, that 3% Italian that is not actually 3% in spirit. They pass down the dark eyes, the hair, the skin that tans deep, the stubborn jaw, and that inner radar that pings when something in the room is off. They did not always have language for Melungeon. They just knew they were mountain people and a little different, and sometimes they used safer words like Black Irish, because it went down easier in town. Then, way down the line, in the same valley those first ridge people could have looked down on from their porches, a girl was born who would grow up to be a Nona in a blue dress. She'd feel all of it in her bones before she ever read a word about Melungeons. She'd sense the war in the air. She'd see patterns in people nobody else picked up yet. She'd love God like those old mountain saints did, loud and sure, and she'd still be drawn like a magnet to the old stories, the folklore, the things moving at the edge of the campfire. She'd sit on her porch, spine full of hardware, looking at the same ridge line her ancestors used to walk, and the land would recognize her. Oh, there she is, one of ours. And when she finally saw that word, Melungeon, she'd feel that jolt of recognition, not because a test told her so, but because it matched what the bones and the spirit had been saying for years. Mixed mountain people, devout, mixed in blood and bone, tucked up in those old ridges. So when that word finally crossed her path, it was like somebody handed her the file folder title for what she already was. Melungeon, meaning those mixed ancestry mountain families the outside world never really understood, but God and the hills always recognized. Now picture that porch years from now. One of her grandkids is out there with her fireflies starting up and they ask, "Nona, what are we?" And she can say, "We're mountain people. We're Melungeon. We're the ones God stuck on this ridge to pray and pay attention." That kid will hear it and not even question it. It'll just settle into their bones the way it did in hers. And the ridgeline, same as always, will just stand there quiet in the dusk like, yeah, that's one of ours too.